The smile that lied. How you Menglong fooled the world while falling apart inside. They said his smile could light up any room, and it did. Every time you Menglong walked onto a set, his presence was like a sunrise after a storm. His laughter was warm, his eyes gentle, his demeanor calm. To his fans, he was the embodiment of grace, talent, and quiet strength. But behind that perfectly composed smile was a man who was breaking, slowly, silently, and completely unseen. Yu Menglong's death wasn't just another tragedy in the entertainment world. It was a reminder that even the brightest lights can burn out in silence. For years, he had been the charming actor, the devoted artist, the man who never seemed shaken by life's chaos. Yet, the truth behind his final days revealed something far darker. A soul suffocated by expectations, loneliness, and the crushing weight of pretending to be okay. Those who knew him often said he had a gift for making others feel at ease. He remembered birthdays, comforted colleagues, and always showed up on time with that same polite, unbothered smile. But what no one realized was that his kindness was also his shield. Every time someone told him how lucky he was, he smiled a little harder, as if to convince them, and himself, that they were right. He had learned to smile through exhaustion, through anxiety, through the kind of sadness that lingered even in laughter. His rise to fame was swift and dazzling. From his first major drama appearance, audiences fell in love with his calm energy and soft-spoken confidence. But with every new role came another layer of pressure, a demand to be perfect, to stay flawless, to never falter. Fame had given him a platform, but it had also taken something vital, the space to be human. Every emotion had to be rehearsed, every tear scripted. Off-screen, he became a stranger to himself. Those close to him later admitted that he was different in the last year. His messages became shorter, his calls less frequent. He often joked about being tired, but brushed it off with his usual charm. "I'm just busy," he would say. "I'll rest when the project's done." But that project never ended, not the real one. The performance of being fine continued long after the cameras stopped rolling. He had grown used to hearing how lucky he was, how people wished they could trade places with him. But success can be a lonely currency. Behind the flashing lights and red carpets, he spent nights alone in quiet apartments, scrolling through old photos, reading fan letters, and wondering how he had lost the boy who once dreamed freely. The mirror reflected a man the world adored, but he barely recognized. There were warning signs, but they were hidden behind the perfection he mastered. The insomnia, the weight loss, the moments where he stared too long into the distance, lost in thought. His colleagues said he sometimes disappeared on set for a few minutes, returning with that same practiced grin. No one questioned it, not because they didn't care, but because he was so good at pretending that they believed him. Friends said he hated talking about pain. He feared being a burden, feared letting others down. So he wore his pain like a costume, polished, invisible, and always convincing. When people praised him for being so composed, he only smiled wider. But every smile was another crack in the mask he had built. The last months of his life were the hardest. He had begun writing more. Quiet reflections, unsent letters, small notes that no one saw until after he was gone. His words were filled with a deep ache. Questions about purpose, about what it meant to give so much of yourself to a world that only saw the performance, not the person. He often wrote about wanting to disappear, not dramatically, just quietly, like a shadow fading into the night. The exhaustion had become more than physical. It was emotional, spiritual, an ache that no amount of sleep or success could heal. Fame had given him applause, but what he longed for most was peace. The night before he passed, he posted a photo, nothing unusual, just a simple image of city lights outside his window. The caption read, "It's beautiful when it's quiet." Fans flooded the comments with love, unaware that it was his silent goodbye. It was the kind of beauty only he could notice, the stillness that comes before the world goes dark. When the news broke, the world froze. Fans didn't believe it at first. How could someone so gentle, so full of life, be gone? But those closest to him weren't surprised, only heartbroken. They had seen the small changes, the slow withdrawal, but never imagined how deep it truly went. They thought he was just tired. They thought he'd bounce back like he always did. His apartment was neat, quiet, and still when they found him. On his desk lay a notebook filled with fragments of thoughts, half-written lyrics, sketches, and one line that seemed to echo through everyone's heart afterward. I was afraid to disappoint everyone with the truth. It was the truth that no one saw, that his smile was never for him. It was for the world, for the fans, for everyone who needed him to be okay, so they could keep believing in their own dreams. But even stars run out of light when they give too much of it away. The entertainment world paid tribute with photos, tears, and words of love. Directors spoke of his dedication. Fans wrote letters that will never be read, and his colleagues shared memories of laughter and warmth. Yet in every story, there was the same haunting realization that behind every happy picture was a man who had been slowly drowning in silence. Yu Menglong's story isn't just about fame or loss. It's about how deeply we underestimate invisible pain. We live in a world that celebrates the smiling face and ignores the trembling hand behind it. He became the symbol of how easy it is to fake happiness and how dangerous it can be when no one looks beyond the surface. Even now, his videos and songs circulate online, replayed by millions. But for those who look closely, there's something different in his eyes, something that was always there, hidden in plain sight. It's not sadness, exactly, but a quiet surrender, as if he already knew that no amount of applause could drown out the silence he carried inside. His legacy now carries both light and shadow. The light, his artistry, his kindness, his gentleness. The shadow, the reminder that even the strongest smiles can hide unbearable weight. His story forces a painful but necessary question. How many others are still smiling like he did, convincing the world they're fine while slowly falling apart inside? In remembering him, we remember that behind every perfect image is a person with fears, doubts, and unseen wounds. Maybe if someone had looked beyond his smile, asked one more time if he was truly okay, things might have been different. Maybe the world would still have the man whose laughter once made millions feel less alone. Yu Menglong's death wasn't an act of weakness. It was the final result of years of quiet suffering, misunderstood strength, and emotional exhaustion. He didn't want to die, he just wanted the pain to stop. The industry that built him also broke him, a place where vulnerability is seen as weakness and masks become survival. Now his smile lives on in photos, his voice echoes through his songs, and his absence lingers in every heart that loved him. But behind all that, his story serves as a whisper to the world. Check on the ones who smile the most. They might be the ones who need it most. The truth about Yu Menglong's final days was not written in headlines or interviews. It lived in the quiet details, the moments that seemed ordinary until they were gone. Behind the cameras, the laughter, and the charming persona that everyone adored, there was a man fighting to keep his heart from collapsing under invisible pressure. In the months leading up to his death, Yu Menglong's world looked perfect on the outside. His career was thriving, his fan base growing, his smile as radiant as ever. But those close to him would later remember subtle changes. Small cracks that were easy to miss but impossible to ignore once you knew. His eyes lingered longer when people spoke to him, as if he was listening for something more than words. Sometimes, during breaks on set, he would sit alone, watching the city lights from the window, lost in thought. He often said the lights calmed him, perhaps because they never judged him. They just glowed, endlessly, without asking anything in return. It was different from the world he lived in, a world that constantly demanded more. More perfection, more control, more smiles. There was one evening, a few weeks before his passing, when he was filming a particularly emotional scene, one that required tears. He delivered it flawlessly, earning applause from everyone present. Yet after the director yelled, "Cut," you didn't stop crying. The crew thought it was method acting, but those tears weren't for the script. They were for himself, for the exhaustion he could no longer hide once the cameras stopped pretending with him. Later that night, he sent a message to a close friend. Sometimes it's easier to cry when people expect it. At least then no one asks why. It was a chilling reflection of how he had learned to mask real pain behind performance. As the pressure grew, his schedule became relentless. Endorsements, rehearsals, appearances, all demanding that he remain perfect. Yet, he started canceling small things that once made him happy. Coffee with friends, late-night music sessions, the quiet walks he used to take near the river. He told everyone he was tired, but tired was only the surface of something much deeper. He began writing again, something he had stopped doing years ago. His notes were messy, scattered thoughts inked in fading pen, but they carried more honesty than his public interviews ever did. One entry read, "I smile so people don't worry. I laugh so they don't look too close. If I stopped smiling, would anyone still love me?" Those who read his writings after his death said they felt like listening to someone whisper from another world, someone who had already started saying goodbye long before he left. One of the most haunting details about his final week was how normal everything appeared. He went to work, joked with the crew, even recorded a behind-the-scenes video where he teased the makeup artist for fussing over his hair. Fans adored that clip. It showed his playfulness, his energy. But those who knew him best saw something else, a strange calmness in his tone, as if he was letting go, piece by piece. The last night of his life, he had dinner alone. A simple meal. He played soft piano music, one of his favorite melodies, and left the lights dim. On his phone was an unfinished voice note, a few seconds of silence followed by his faint voice saying, "Thank you for loving me even when I couldn't love myself." No one knows who the message was for. Some believe it was for his fans, others for someone he once loved. But in those few words lay the essence of his story, a man who gave everything he had to the world but forgot to keep anything for himself. After his passing, the people around him began to piece together the signs, the exhaustion masked by humor, the delayed responses, the growing quietness. They realized how easily love and attention can blind you to real pain when it's hidden behind a smile. The media tried to summarize his life in a headline, but no headline could hold the weight of who he was. He was more than his fame, more than the tragedy. He was someone who loved deeply, who worked tirelessly, who smiled not because he was happy, but because he didn't want anyone else to feel sad. His colleagues recalled how he once told them, "I just want people to remember me as someone who made them feel something." Ironically, he did, but not in the way he expected. His death left an emotional scar that forced everyone to rethink the way they see strong people. At his memorial, there was a silence unlike any other. Thousands gathered, fans holding candles, photos, letters. The wind that night was gentle, and for a moment it felt like he was there, smiling again, this time not as a mask but as a memory. The lights from the city reflected in the tears of strangers, and someone whispered, "He smiled so we wouldn't cry." That line spread across the internet, turning into a symbol of what he represented, the quiet pain behind perfection. His fan pages filled with messages like, "I wish I looked closer," and "We believed his smile because we needed to." What makes Yu Menglong's story so heartbreakingly real is that it mirrors the silent struggle so many people live with every day. The pressure to appear fine, the fear of being misunderstood, the belief that showing pain is weakness. He became the reflection of everyone who has ever smiled through heartbreak, laughed through loneliness, or kept going just to keep others from worrying. His life teaches a brutal truth. Sometimes the strongest people are the ones who break the most quietly. They don't shout for help. They whisper it in the form of a smile, a "don't worry," or a "I'm fine." And if no one listens closely, that whisper fades. Now, as his songs and dramas continue to live on, his story lingers like a quiet reminder that behind every perfect photo lies a story we might never fully know. He may have fooled the world, but not out of deceit, out of love. He didn't want the world to feel his pain. And maybe that was the greatest tragedy of all, that the same heart that comforted everyone else could not find comfort for itself. In the end, Yu Menglong's smile was not a lie in the malicious sense. It was a shield, fragile, beautiful, and deeply human. And even though that smile is gone, it left behind something powerful, a reason to look beyond the surface, to check in, to care, to listen. Because sometimes the most beautiful smiles hide the loudest cries for help. And sometimes the brightest stars fall, not because they stop shining, but because the world never noticed how much it hurt to glow.